Hi everyone, Amy here, and today I'm going to show you 3 different ways to use your stencils, and this is a collaboration with a friend of mine, so be sure to stick around for details on that. To jump right in, I'm going to show you some of the products that I'm using on the first card today. This is the Bead Stencil from A Colorful Life Designs. I also have a panel that's already been cut down from A2 size with this stitched rectangle die from Paper Rose. And all the panels that I'm using are going to be 80-pound Neenah Classic Crest Solar White. And I'm also going to be using on this card 3 different Distress Oxide inks. I have the Villainous Potion, Chipped Sapphire, and Seedless Preserve. I also have some blending foams, and here's a picture of the first card that I'm going to make for you today. So this technique is going to involve water, so you can probably use whatever cardstock you want, but just bear in mind, because you are going to be introducing some water, that you want it to be able to hold up a little bit to it. Now this isn't a watercolor paper or anything like that, it is just a cardstock, but it is 80 pounds, so if you were to use something relatively light in weight, it might not hold up the best to the water. So just bear that in mind if you're going to give this technique a try. But basically I'm just using these 3 colors of Distress Oxides and I'm blending them diagonally across the panel. Now this is a water reactive ink, so you could do this technique if you have Distress Oxides, or you could also do it with Distress inks or any other water reactive dye that you have in your crafty stash. This is a really fun way to use your stencils, maybe in a different way that you didn't think about. So here what I'm going to do for this technique is just really saturate this stencil with water. This is just a little spray bottle. I'm doing it on screen so you can see how much I sprayed it. Then I kind of shake it off to make sure it's nice and even before I lay it carefully on top of the panel. Then I'm going to cover it with some paper towel and just give it a minute for the water to react with that ink before I lift it off, and then I will sop off the excess when I take this off. So you can see it creates a really cool effect, if I can ever get it unstuck from my workstation, but it creates a really cool effect that just seems to stand out even more as it dries back. So this is a really fun way to use your stencils and kind of get a reverse of the image. So I'm just going to set that off to dry while I tell you about this lovely lady here. This is my friend Katya. We met recently in the crafty world. She is a fellow card maker and crafter. She's a big DIYer, does a lot of really cool things. So at the end of this video, I will link to her video, but she is going to share with you 3 different ways to use embossing folders. So be sure to stick around to the end for that, and if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe because her videos are really fun. So here I'm going to move on to the next panel, and then at the end I'll kind of finish up the cards and show you the finished products. But this is the Gatsby Arches stencil, also from A Colorful Life Designs, and I am on their design team, so if you do want to shop for some stencils, be sure to use my coupon code AMYFAN10 and you'll save 10% on your complete order. So here's a picture of this card. Now it's a little hard to see the additional feature that I did on the picture, but I'm going to walk you through the process. Now to start, I'm just going to do some standard ink blending. Nothing special here. I'm just using these 4 gorgeous colors from Catherine Pooler. This is the Paradise Found collection, and I'm just going to ink blend like you normally would through a stencil. So there's nothing super groundbreaking here, but stick around just a moment and I'll show you the additional feature that I add to this technique, just to kind of kick it up a notch and add something a little extra special to the card. So I'm kind of working with the green colors to start. I just have one green blending brush for that color family, so I do start with the lighter color green before moving on to the dark, and then onto the teal, and then that beautiful navy juniper mist. So instead of going diagonally or in stripes, I'm kind of spotting all around on this card panel. So basically I'm going to take it off in just a moment here and reveal the gorgeous pattern from the stencil, and then I do clean off my workstation and also clean off the stencil really well and dry it before this part of the technique. Now here I'm showing you a way that you can dry emboss with your stencil to give it a little bit of dimension. Now this won't create the sort of 3D effect that you might get from 3D embossing folders, but it is a little something extra on the front of the card. And you'll see on this one, it ends up quite subtle, but as I show you the back of it, you'll see that it does have quite a bit of dimension. So this is a fun option, even just for a plain piece of cardstock, even if you just wanted to add a subtle bit of dimension on the back of like a white panel on your card. So you can see here I'm using the rubber mat, and I also have a few pieces of just craft cardstock just to kind of create a shim to add some extra pressure. And you can see I didn't line it up the best. You could probably use pixie spray. I tried to avoid it just in case it did kind of really push down some of the residue. So here I decided to come back in with a little piece of low tack tape to kind of hold it in place, and then I wanted to add a little bit more pressure, so I actually brought in my metal shim, not because you need a metal shim for cutting or anything like that, but just to kind of add a little bit more pressure into the sandwich. So just be sure to look at whatever your embossing machine or your die cutting machine recommends for this technique, and kind of play around with it until you get the desired look. But it's just a fun way to kind of use your stencils in a little bit of a different way. So you'll see it in person much better, obviously, than you can on the film, but it does give it a little something extra, and it does raise up the spots that are colored through the stencils, so it gives it a fun little design feature, if you will. So now I'm going to move on to the next technique. I have another panel, same thing, die cut with the stitched rectangle dies, and then this is the Stars and Swags stencil from A Colorful Life Designs. Now this one I'm going to use these shimmer sprays. These are a metallic shimmer spray, and I'm going to use some pixie spray on the back of the stencil just to really hold it down to this card panel, because I don't want it to shift. And here's the end result on this card, and I'm going to show you how I created that look. So I sprayed the back with pixie spray in my spray box, and you let it sit for a minute until it gets tacky, and then I use the brayer to kind of push the stencil really down onto the cardstock just to make sure that I get a good seal. And then once I have that ready to go, you can see it's really hanging onto that card panel, and I put it back in my spray box, and I'm just going to start spritzing with this shimmer spray. Now do bear in mind color theory. You don't want to put colors next to each other that don't get along, because you don't want to muddy it up. So in this case I was mindful to kind of put the blue in the center, and then the purple on one side, and then the green on the other, just because both of them get along with the blue, but maybe not, you know, the purple with the green. So here I'm going to carefully peel back, and you get this cool kind of distressed shimmery sprayed look for this panel. Now I don't want to waste all this extra ink that's left over on the stencil, so I grab another panel and just kind of push that down carefully, mindful not to shift it, and then use my brayer just to kind of push that down. So this is actually a bonus panel. I don't end up turning this one into a card, but now I have it with my other, you know, finished background panels, so I can turn it into a future card. So it's a fun way to get a 2-for-1 out of this technique with your stencils. So bust out those Distress Oxide sprays or shimmer sprays, or maybe distress stains, whatever you have, and use them with your stencils. It's another fun technique to stretch your supplies in your craft room and really get the most out of the stencils. Now these are just a few techniques. I have several other videos on my channel of various different ways to use stencils. Now here you can see I'm shopping my sentiment book. I have baseball card protector sheets and a lot of die cut sentiments and things like that ready to go. So I'm just kind of shopping through, trying to get an idea of how I want to finish these cards. Now this is my critter book, same concept, the same sort of baseball pockets, but these I have die cut out and colored critters ready to go. So this is all part of my batching process in terms of, you know, mass producing cards. I'm just kind of playing with different elements and figuring out how I want to put them together. I'm not going to spend a lot of time with the creation of the cards just because this video is more about the techniques, but I do want to give you an idea of my process and kind of how I come to the card creations that I do. Now this is a Celebrate block die from Catherine Pooler that I recently acquired, and I felt like it needed to be substantial to really stand off this busy background. So I decided to cut one out of black cardstock and one out of that glitter cardstock that I showed. And again, it was still a little too busy for my liking. So here I decided to grab some vellum and use a smaller one of the rectangle dies so that it matches the edging of on the panel. And then this will help that Celebrate stand off a little bit better against that busy background. So if you do create something that's a little too in your face, I guess, if you will, to have your sentiment stand out from it, then consider using some vellum just to kind of give it some separation from the background. And here I have some simple strips from Tailored Expressions. They do make the stamps, the dies, and also those storage boxes that are really handy to kind of display all your different options. And I decided to pick one for the front and for the inside of the card. And I do end up ultimately popping up that sentiment underneath the vellum with some foam strips just to help it stand off even more so from the background. So I have all those pieces attached to this A2 size card base, and then I have this gold blingage that looks really pretty with that gold glittery cardstock that I used for the Celebrate die. Now this is a different Tailored Expression stamp set. This is one that's more for male birthdays and Father's Day. There's some good snarky ones in there, which I love. So I pick a couple of those out. And as you can see, I have that background already attached to a card base as well. And the fun feature on this one is actually this, this little, wow, why can't I think of what they're called? Oh, action wobbler. Oh, I drew a blank all of a sudden. But anyway, I attach an action wobbler to the back of this Love You die cut. This is a Concord and 9th Big On You Love You die cut. And it's just a fun little unexpected feature to the front of the card. I think I'm going to actually give this to my husband for Father's Day. So it's got this fun little spring on it and it wobbles all about, and it's just such a fun unexpected feature to add to your cards. So I added this simple strip to the front and to the inside, and then to continue on the design a little bit, I just grabbed that gorgeous stencil and just did some very simple ink blending just in a couple spots with some residual ink from those blending brushes, and that's going to finish that card. So here's the panel that I didn't end up using. I'm going to end up putting that in my stash for a future card, but here's my finished cards today. This is the Eat Cake and Celebrate. And I did put the little simple strip on the inside. So I'll show you that here in a moment. It says, may all your wishes come true. So simple inside on that one, but it does have a little strip to continue the sentiment. And then this one is so funny. That pig just kills me. That's from Journals for Life, I think. I'll be sure to link all the products that I used in the video description box below. And then here's the Love You to a Super Amazing Guy. And then on the inside it says Happy Father's Day. And that one has the very subtle raised dry embossing. Like I said, you can feel it and you can see it more in person, but it's just kind of a cool little added feature. So I hope you enjoyed these 3 different techniques to use your stencils. Like I said, there's many million more ways to use them. You know I love stencils, so I'm happy to give you some more inspiration, hopefully, to get out there and use them. Now here's the link to Katya's video. Be sure to go to her video next and check out her awesome ideas on how to use embossing folders. And I'm sure you're going to love her just like I do. Be sure to subscribe to her channel if you haven't already. And I appreciate you so much for watching. I'll check you next time. Bye.